Hey, Shey.
Hey, Anna. How are you feeling?
I feel great. Super excited for the launch of our PLN this summer.
Yes! Listeners, if you haven't heard the news yet, Anna and I are getting ready to launch the Teacher Think-Aloud Professional Learning Network in July.
Woo!
As you know, we're always thinking about how we can bring quality content to our international colleagues. So we've decided to create a space for you all to come together in the name of teaching and learning.
Yep. So beginning in July, we'll hold monthly Zoom meetings, each month unpacking a different topic that matters to you. On July 25th at 8 a.m. Pacific time, we'll hold our PLN launch party, where we'll dive into what it means to be a reflective educator.
Yes, we'll also use this time to get to know what your needs are in the realm of professional development and build our offerings around what you share.
We hope you'll join us. You can register at teacherthinkaloud.com/PLN.
Anna, I'm so excited to bring together impassioned educators from all over the globe. Teachers are just so inspiring, aren't they?
We're definitely a special group of people with lots of valuable ideas and lessons to share. So many skills that are transferable to life outside of the classroom.
And that brings us to the topic of our episode today: what non-educators can learn from teachers.
Let's do it.
Hello, and welcome to the Teacher Think-Aloud podcast, a podcast for reflective practice for teachers of English around the world. I'm your co-host, Shey.
And I'm Anna. And today we're going to examine what lay people, those who have not formally been teachers, can learn from people who work in the field of education.
Our listener, Dustin, commented on Twitter that folks should know that they are also teachers for the people in their lives. You don't have to be a certified teacher in order to inspire curiosity.
Yes, so true. We should all recognize the power we have to influence others.
So, for a little bit of background, since this is a bit of a departure from what we normally do here, this conversation started back around the time we recorded episode 15, So You've Lost Your Zest for Teaching, in which we proposed some ways that teachers could reignite their passion for teaching, or take the myriad of skills they've polished as teachers and try their hand at something new.
Yeah, and we just kept coming back to the notion that as teachers, we have to wear so many hats, that the skills that we develop would serve us in different arenas. And ultimately that there's just so much that people outside of education could get from observing educators.
And we confirmed this when we asked some of our non-teacher listeners to share their takeaways from the teaching topics we've discussed.
The fact that we have non-teacher listeners tells you something, huh?
Right. It's almost as if people just know the magic that teachers have and they want to get a taste by listening to our podcast.
Maybe. Or they're just our friends and we force them to listen.
Well, that too. She didn't have to say that.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, across the individuals we surveyed, a few prominent themes emerged. And the first one aligns so nicely with our purpose, Shey. And that's this idea of continual reflection.
And we do it here, of course, to better our practice. But anyone can benefit from slowing down, even pausing for a moment to reflect on their day, either as a whole or focus in on one aspect of their day that might be niggling them a bit.
Right. We talked about this in episode 1, just pausing and thinking. Maybe jotting down a note, talking to a confidant, pivoting, readjusting the way we approach things.
Exactly. These little acts of reflection mean we're always learning. Actually, one of our listeners, Sarah, in response to our question of what non-educators can learn from teachers, she said that there is the need to be lifelong learners.
We absolutely agree, Sarah. Thanks for joining the conversation. By the way, check out Sarah's podcast, the Lit Think podcast, where she and her co-host Alicia, both English teachers, apply literary analysis to books, movies, and other products of pop culture.
Good stuff. Another prominent theme that our non-educator listeners have highlighted is the fact that making mistakes is part of the learning process. This is something we really go into in episode 4, To Err is Human. And I think this is something we sell really well as language teachers. We're constantly reminding students that learning is iterative, right? That it's not linear. There are a lot of ups and downs in the process.
Right. We've come back to this topic of making mistakes multiple times. As long as you learn from the mistakes that you make, there's no harm in screwing up. It's just human.
And in that same vein, something we touched upon in episode 9, Things They Never Tell New Teachers, is how important it is to get comfortable with failure. One of our non-educator listeners, Dana, who works in building and infrastructure management, shared a gem when he said, accepting your mistakes facilitates professional growth.
Yeah. Acknowledging our mistakes, it never feels good in the moment, right? But it can give us so much insight.
Exactly. Insight that we can't glean if we don't try. And fail.
Right. Failure is definitely a feeling teachers are well acquainted with and
So
can
sad.
perhaps teach others to grow from. And also, good old trial and error is useful, but so are the folks around us, our colleagues, our friends. Use the people in our vicinity, our coworkers, as resources for reflection and development.
And this is true not only for those moments when we don't know what to do or we've already made a mistake and we're trying to fix it. We need to be receptive to. And if we're really proactive, seek out feedback from those around us.
Our peers can be invaluable resources for sure. And also our supervisors. Teachers are very familiar with the idea of performance reviews. Remember episode 23? When a superior comes into our room, takes copious notes, and gives feedback. That kind of input, if we know how to learn from it, it can be edifying.
So that love of feedback for improving our craft, that's something teachers might be able to inspire others to do, whether the feedback comes from a supervisor or just a colleague or a friend. Another major theme that emerged from our conversations with non-educators is that teachers can provide wonderful tools and examples for how to listen and engage with people.
Yes, we're totally people. In episode 2, Shut Up and Let Them Talk, we examined the balance between student talk time and teacher talk time. But this idea is one that can prove useful across multiple disciplines and just in everyday interactions, I think. One of our listeners, Allie, who is an engineering manager at a major tech company, shared that she got a lot out of that episode in particular. She said that even though she's not a teacher by trade, these concepts are essential to team building at work. For example, she tries to reduce the top-down nature of the manager-employee relationship by letting others lead and engage in the conversation, while she steps back and facilitates.
Yeah, I mean, she's essentially applying the Socratic method to her work, which is wonderful for generating engagement, buy-in, and ultimately collaboration, right? She also highlights how asking questions is an art, which we touch upon in episode 3. Sorry, what's your question? If people, particularly people in positions of authority, are constantly saying, this is what needs to get done, instead of offering an opportunity for people to share their thoughts, they're doing a disservice to their employees and themselves, right? The same limitations occur when people lead others in their questioning techniques with closed yes or no questions, guiding them towards their intended outcome instead of creating space for unique individual contributions with more open-ended questions.
Something that Allie also brought up here is the presence of people who might be dealing with imposter syndrome or just might not feel comfortable being in the limelight. They might need a little extra warming up, right?
To me, this is all about rapport building, baby.
Yes. As teachers, we almost expect those effective filters to be up high, right? We know that we need to put in some work to make our classroom feel like a community, for our students to feel that they are amongst friends. We share a bunch of strategies for rapport building in episode 7.
And, it pains me to admit, because you know how I feel about icebreakers when I'm on the receiving end anyway. But there's a reason that we cling so tightly to them. They work.
Totally. Giving your students or just the people you work with, whatever setting, Giving them a chance to learn a bit about their peers and share about themselves in a controlled environment can work wonders for team morale. And once you know who you have in front of you, you come to learn more about their goals, what drives them.
And often this paves the way for collective goal setting.
Yeah.
I imagine this being useful in any collaborative environment where people are driven by a mission or a specific outcome.
Yeah, getting everyone on the same page is critical, but often we have to lead by example in sharing our true selves, our personalities. That type of vulnerability doesn't come naturally to everyone.
That's true. I do tend to think that openly offering those pieces of yourself can build an environment founded on empathy and shared understanding. And since we live in a globalized world, we likely find ourselves interacting with people from all over the place. So the cultivation of empathy is particularly crucial. Now, our work as teachers, and particularly English language teachers, requires us to examine our ICC, our intercultural communicative competence, and flex those muscles every day. But this idea of building ICC in other areas, well, that just brings so much joy to me. It inspires hope.
Me too. In episode 11, You, Me, and ICC, we delve into strategies that teachers can use to build their students' intercultural competence. But there are a lot of lessons that anyone can take and apply in their own lives, like the process of perspective taking, recognizing that your perspective is built on years of social conditioning and that it's just one interpretation of the events taking place. Everyone around us holds their own unique perspective. Trying to understand where other people are coming from on a regular basis, challenging our own views as the right views, makes us more well-rounded people.
Totally. A more well-rounded person equipped with the tools necessary to confront the challenges of our times and potentially, well, almost certainly, mediate conflict that arises in the workplace or in daily life.
Yeah, so I think this notion of perspective taking bodes well for handling conflict in a more holistic way. What do the individuals involved bring to the exchange? How are individuals' experiences contributing to how they're showing up in episodes of conflict?
And how might the context, the workplace in this event or anywhere else, impact how the exchange unfolds? In episode 25, Handling Conflict in the Classroom, we dialogue with other educators to understand their strategies for dealing with conflict in the classroom. But being reflective rather than being reactive when witnessing a conflict or even participating in one holds relevance in any context, I think.
Absolutely. And one of the greatest takeaways from our conversation with our guest, Joe, was that empathy is king.
Or queen.
Touché.
So this idea of building empathy and considering the individual within the context are things that extend beyond the scope of the workplace or the classroom. Empathy makes us human. Empathy helps us connect and foster mutual understanding.
Yeah. So as teachers, part of that empathy is getting to know our students. We may do that through needs assessments or just informal interactions, temperature checks. And I think this is something that carries over into any field. We need to know where people are to engage them appropriately from a socio-emotional perspective, but also from the perspective of experience and cognition.
Right. There is great power in scaffolding, in creating systems that cater to the people we have right in front of us and their skill level, rather than the idea that we have in our heads about their skill level. Knowing our audience allows us to interact in a way that's accessible for all.
So Shey, we've pulled ideas from our non-educator listeners, several of whom happen to be managers. So I think we can all agree that people can learn a lot about managing people from teachers.
Yeah. So listeners, if you're following along with us, episode 10, KISS, or Keep It Simple, Stupid. We're kind of mean with our titles, aren't we? Looks at routines and structures that make for effective classroom management. I was thrilled to learn that some of our non-educator listeners got so much out of this episode.
Yeah, so while the episode focused on classroom routines, establishing and maintaining routines can be helpful in any facet of life, right? What stood out most to those we surveyed was the idea that making individuals accountable and giving them responsibility can lead to genuine feelings of empowerment.
So when people feel trusted, they feel valued and perhaps even appreciated. And when people feel seen and appreciated, they tend to work harder. So an example of this from our wonderful listener, Allie, thanks again, Allie, once again, might be giving a team member the task of running a meeting instead of defaulting to a traditional manager-led meeting.
But I also want to emphasize one of our favorite strategies to encourage collaboration, Shey, and that's think, pair, share.
The one we love so much, we tried to name the podcast after it.
So sad. That so popular strategy for getting more equal input, giving individuals the opportunity to think about a prompt, and then after some individual reflection, they dialogue with a peer, and only after that do they present their thoughts to the whole group.
Yeah. So not only does this strategy allow the introverts and the shy guys among us a bit more time to prepare for sharing, but bouncing ideas off of others is just an incredible chance to broaden our horizons, to harness the power of multiple perspectives. Just so much good.
So good. So Shey, we've explored some of the skills others can learn from teachers. Mostly, really, teachers are pros at the humanistic side of things, right? But there are also a few things we've explored on the podcast that teachers are still learning about along with their non-teacher friends.
Ah, yes. Moving on from learning from teachers, let us now commence the learning with teachers section of our episode.
You always know how to lighten the mood, Shey.
I kid. These are serious things. First, the notions of equity and representation. In episode 13, we approached these issues as they exist in our classrooms and education systems. But spending more time thinking about equitable practices, ensuring that individuals' backgrounds are considered in delivering access and creating opportunities for them to be successful is something that needs to happen in every line of work, in every facet of society.
Totally. And teachers are not the ones with all the answers. We're all learning this one together. It's an ongoing process. One thing that our non-educator listener, Allie, mentioned as well.
Allie.
This is just Allie's episode. But it's
Where is Allie?
It's how she tries to promote equity through hiring processes. As a manager, she interviews candidates fairly frequently. And what I love about what she shared with us is that she consciously tries to leave her bias at the door. She primes herself to recognize her bias towards a US or Eurocentric
White.
white norm. She opens herself up to the richness of others' cultures, backgrounds, and personalities.
Awesome. And the same goes for representation. When we develop curricula and classroom practice, we need to consider who our audience is, what diverse backgrounds are present in our classrooms. Do our materials, the stories we tell, share multiple ways of seeing the world? Do they perpetuate a myopic view of reality that reflects what we as educators are most comfortable with? We need to ensure that our students are able to see themselves, or people who look like them, represented in the classroom dialogue.
Right. And this is something that other fields can work on too. Are training materials playing up cultural or linguistic stereotypes that perpetuate othering? Do discussions consider other ways of doing things instead of imposing mainstream cultural norms?
Yeah, definitely something to look out for. And lastly, and this is a nice way to end the conversation since we will be taking a little summer hiatus, our own little act of defiance against toxic productivity in mainstream, at least US culture. Toxic productivity is defined as an obsession with being productive at all times. And often that desire for productivity comes at the expense of other priorities in life.
Yep. And in episodes 15 and 16, we admit that we've bought into this school of thought, much to our personal detriment.
Still struggling.
Yeah, but we're working on it.
15 episodes later.
And we're not the only ones, not us individually or us as educators. Across all disciplines and across the world, people are working themselves into dust simply because doing nothing brings us shame. Rest has somehow become a sign of weakness in our culture.
And I think it's really important that we push back against this narrative, this expectation that people just exist to accomplish something of great importance. When we focus so much on accomplishments, climbing the ladder in our workplace or socioeconomically, we miss out on so much of what life has to offer.
Right. You are not your job, right? We might all need our job and our passion might align with what we do to earn a living, but it's healthy to have interests outside of work and to take time to just exist sometimes.
It's easier said than done.
Don't we know it?
On that note, we'll be taking a month-long break during the month of July to give ourselves a breather, see each other in person.
Shey's coming to visit Seattle.
And to gear up for our upcoming PLN events. But that doesn't mean that our conversation with you stops here, listeners. We'd love to hear from you. What are some skills that teachers have that you think could transfer well into other disciplines? What can people learn from educators?
You can join the conversation on our various social media accounts. Email us via our contact form at teacherthinkaloud.com or comment via Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. We welcome your reflections, questions, and ideas.
Ooh, and also sign up for our PLN launch party taking place on July 25th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. You can sign up at teacherthinkaloud.com/PLN.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Teacher Think Aloud podcast. And a special thanks to the non-educator listeners who contributed so many thoughts to this episode. I'm thinking of you, Allie. And until next time, everyone, happy teaching
and happy reflecting.